So where are we now regarding ASUU strike, federal government's decision? Well, let's join the president of ASUU, Professor Abiodun Oguyemi, who joins us from our Abuja studio this morning. Well, thank you for joining us on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Good morning.
Right. Good morning to you. Now, I mean, this strike has been on for about 8 months. That's almost an academic year gone, just like that. And I know you've had several meetings with the federal government. Now, listening to the Minister of Labour and Employment saying that, well, your union is going to receive the last irreducible offer from the government. Now, that was last week. This is Monday. And a lot of Nigerians would like to know, have you received that? If we could start off with that.
Well, as of this morning, we have not received from government. We are still expecting that they will give their irreducible offer, as the minister promised.
Right. Now, you laid out your demands at the start of this strike around March, and some of them date back as far as 2009 with previous administration. So if we could just go through them one by one, just so we know how much progress we have made so far. Now, this one concerns funds for revitalization of public universities. Now, we understand that ASUU is demanding 110 billion naira, and that's based on previous agreements and MOUs. Now, the FG, that's the federal government, is offering 20 billion naira as a result of what it calls dire economic situation. So regarding that, Nigerians would like to know, you are staying at 110 billion naira. The federal government is saying, well, we have 20 billion naira. Is there a middle ground to this?
Well, thank you very much. What they call demand here has a history, just like you said. We have found that over the years, each time we had agreement with government, negotiated agreement, government would just focus only on the salary component. The aspects of funding, the aspect of autonomy, and the aspect of conducive environment for learning and working in the universities will not be addressed. So, talking specifically about Revitalization Fund, we had agreement signed in 2009. Then we had 24 federal universities, and the government signed that they will give them restoration fund to the tune of 1.5 trillion over a period of 5 years. But government never did anything until we continue to insist that government should not just stop at talking about salaries. Government should talk about the environment where we work, the environment where our students live, and to make our universities competitive with others in the world. So by 2012, after much persistence and advocacy by our union, government agreed to embark on the needs assessment of all public universities. At the end of the day, about 68 universities were visited. And the report was quite revealing. We visited hostels where students were packed like sardines, as we usually say. We visited classrooms and lecture theaters without seats, without electricity facilities. We visited laboratories without chemicals and reagents, and there could not be anything called research in such laboratories, because even some laboratories in first-generation universities were without running taps, and kerosene stoves were used in place of Bunsen burners. So we found all these things that were documented, and the report of needs assessment of the federal government of Nigeria is there for all to see. So when this report came back, when government got this report from the committee, it set up to verify our claims. Government was scandalized because that report was presented to the National Economic Council, where all governors were present. And all governors agreed, together with the federal government, that something urgent must be done. At the end of the day, government agreed to massively inject funds to the tune of 1.3 trillion over a period of 6 years, starting with 2013. So For 2013, government was to release 200 billion, and for the subsequent 5 years, government was to release 220 billion each year. Unfortunately, it was only for 2013 that government released 200 billion. And that fund was released over a period of 5 years. By 2017, our union now reminded government that you promised to revitalize our universities, to address the rot and decay by massively injecting funds into the system. But you have stopped after the first tranche. So we had left 5 tranches. In 2017, this government signed a memorandum of action with us. And the government promised that we will give 20 billion to show a sign of commitment to the memorandum of understanding the previous government signed with you in 2013. And we assure you, as soon as we could activate other sources of funding that we have proposed, we will restore the subsequent subsequent releases. But unfortunately, again, government went to sleep. 2019, we had to come back to remind them. Now, what you promised on revitalization, you have not done. We had done memo. At some point, we set up a 7-man committee or 7-person committee that worked with the Federal Ministry of Finance that came up with suggestions, including these facts we are talking about, including stamp duty and some other recommendations were brought up. It was a joint committee of our union and government.
Right.
And when
if I could
those
just come in
recommendations
briefly,
were brought up,
Professor Ogre, just a moment. I just want to clear something out. So you mentioned that this government has only paid, or at least paid 20 billion naira for the revitalization of universities, public universities in the country. And you are asking for at least 110 billion, which is where I started from. By the way, thank you for giving that background. But the question now is, what is the minimum that ASUU wants regarding the revitalization of federal universities or public universities in the country? Is it 110 billion, or you're ready to shift ground closer to the federal government's 20 billion?
We didn't start with 110 billion. I want to show that we have shifted ground. We asked for one tranche of 220 billion. But when federal government was saying that, well, you have to shift ground, you have to consider situation, we went back to our members. And our members said, well, let government give 50% as a sign of commitment. So each time government says, ASUU has not shifted ground, we fault them on that because we didn't start with 110 billion. So if government is saying that for a union that asked for 110 billion as a mark of, as a way of watering down the demand, because we have halved the one tranche that we said government must start with. Now, government is saying we will give 20 billion out of 110. What percentage is that? So our member said we have worked with 50%. Let government come out and say, well, we know this 20% is not, 20 billion is not realistic.
Prof,
what will that
just
do
a moment.
in a system?
Yeah, just a moment, Prof.
As bad as we have now.
Yeah, just a moment, Prof. This 110 billion naira one tranche that ASUU is asking for the revitalization of public universities, you talked earlier that at the time that the agreement was signed, it was for 24 federal universities. How many universities is this fund meant for?
No, I didn't say when the memorandum of understanding was signed, it was meant for 24 universities. It was 2009 agreement that specified 24 universities. But by the time the needs assessment was conducted in 2012, I said about 68 universities were visited. Now we have about 90 universities, public, federal, and state universities, because all of them were visited then. Since that visit, new universities have been created, and more are still being created. This is what we have seen. Government will create universities that they are not ready to fund. Those 12 universities that were created
Just a moment, Prof.
under the last administration.
Let's speed this up. Just a moment, Prof. These, you're talking about between 68 and 90 universities now, and these are federal public universities, am I correct?
Federal and state.
Federal and state public universities. Okay. Now, that visitation, team, those visitation teams that went around, did it include any committee of the Senate or committee of the House of Representatives? What is their take or what is their input in all of these?
Well, at every point, those reports were presented. We had representatives from even the Senate. So because when we were talking about this issue in 2012, 2013, then late comrade Chukwu Mireje, I was the chairman of the Senate Committee on Education, and we interacted actively with him. So the committee was in the picture, just as we are doing now. As we are discussing with government now, the chairman of Senate Committee on Tertiary Education and TED Fund has been participating in our meetings. In fact, we have met the Senate President over this matter, and we have presented all the issues before him and the leadership of Senate. So there was no time
result of the intervention of the National
presented this
Assembly.
issue that we didn't bring
just a moment, Prof. Yes, what progress has been made since the intervention or the interface with the National Assembly on this stalemate that's lasted, as my brother said here, 8 months, a full academic year about?
Well, I think it is not correct to say it has lasted 8 months. There was a lockdown that also lasted for about 5 months, and we could not have active engagement. But during that period of lockdown, we called on government to start thinking of how to solve the problem. And we have been calling this matter an emergency situation, just like we had with COVID-19. It was just because government was not responsive enough. Well, progress, talking about progress, we will say that all we have had so far are promises. And our members are saying they are tired of promises. Because when we signed a memorandum of action in 2017, government went to sleep. We signed another one, 2019, nothing happened a year after. So even these 4 other issues that we have listed, we are just tracking them. But because you started with revitalization, that's why I said I should give the details about revitalization.
All right,
when we come to other issues, I will also tell you more about it.
Yes. Well, perhaps those other issues are included in this tape you're about to listen to of the Minister of State for Education, Chukwuemeka Wajuba, on some of the ways in which the federal government has addressed the issues that ASUU has been raising.
The 5 points you just raised, you can look at each one of them. Visitation panels to universities. The president has signed the visitation panel report, and we've constituted all the panels. Malama Damadamu, the Minister of Education, has worked at all of them. It's been signed off on the president. We've taken it now to the Attorney General because the law actually requires you to gazette them. So it's being gazetted. That's not a problem. The second, which is lease assessment for universities and payment of we have agreed to what it is that government needs to provide. We've made offers of how much money that is available to the government's coffers. We didn't just drop from the moon, and ASUU is not some people out of this world. They are here in Nigeria. They know that the limitations of the economy. The Nigeria sells only 2 million barrels of oil a day. And at most at $35. So it's not like that $35 multiplied this will probably give you somewhere in the neighborhood of $700 million.
So as far as the federal government is concerned, these issues are getting attention. What's the challenge as far as ASUU is concerned?
Well, with due respect to the Honorable Minister of State, exactly what he said in that tape was what they told us in 2017 and 2019. In fact, in the memorandum of action of 2019, government said, well, the inauguration of the visitation panels was just awaiting gazetting. 1 year after we came back to the same story. I'm talking of February 7, 2019, when we signed the last memorandum of action. So if more than 1 year after, government is still gazetting, how long will it take government to gazette? So that one, as far as our members are concerned, is no longer acceptable. What they want to see is inaugurate the panel so that we know that they are ready, the panels are ready to do their job. Talking about dollars and sale of oil, I wonder if Nigerians have ever had government, maybe except in the 70s, government saying that we have enough money to spend on any particular matter. It is what they see as emergency that they give their attention to. It's about priority. If we see education as a priority, we will deploy all our resources to address the emergency. We see the situation in which we are as a state of emergency. A state of emergency should be declared in that sector because that is where the future of this country lies. People, the president signed an executive order in 2018 talking about local content. Local content is about research and development. How can we have research and development in universities without laboratories, without libraries, without functional studios and theaters? That is what we need. It is investment in education that grows any country. It's like we prefer calling people that will come from Asia, Europe, America, to come and develop our country. It never happens anywhere because anybody you bring into this country has interest of their country at the back of their mind.
Right.
So what we have been saying is that we need our universities to grow this country. We need our universities to innovate and to develop this country.
One other issue you raised.
Intervention in university is not a waste. It's an investment.
Now, one other issue you raised is the earned academic allowance. But just to be clear, when you say that the strike has not been on for up to just less than 8 months, and one wonders, was it not on March the 23rd that ASUU declared that strike? So that's almost 8 months. But talking about the other demand regarding the earned academic allowances, I know ASUU is demanding 30 billion naira for federal universities, and the FG is saying, well, we can just pay about 30 billion naira to ASUU and 3 other unions. I know that has also been a tricky issue for ASUU. So is ASUU planning to concede on that? I mean, think about the other unions and say, well, we realize that we're in the struggle together, so how about we shift ground? What is ASUU's thought on that?
It is not about ASUU versus other unions. We have never operated like that. But it's about what you negotiate with a union. It is not proper for one union to negotiate on behalf of any other union because each union in the university system today has its own agreement with federal government. What ASUU is asking for is based on the agreement we sign with government. And every claim that ASUU makes, the members have data. They have facts and figures. So if we are working from the premise of what has been verified for our members, we think it will be inappropriate to now say, well, let's extrapolate for other groups. They are our comrades, and they are also free to make their demands on government based on their own agreements. It's as simple as that.
Well, you also, most of the issues that ASUU is raising have to do with funding. There is also the issue of IPPIS and UTAS, and we understand where ASUU stands on that one and where the federal government stands. But what's the latest on that? We understand that ASUU, the federal government is putting UTAS to what they call an integrity test. How long, according to the agreement that you have with the federal government, is that supposed to last? Because lives of young people are at stake here.
Well, the young people are also our children. They are our wards. As I address you today, I have 2 undergraduates who are my children in my house, and many of our members also have theirs. We feel for our children because we are concerned about their future. What we are doing as a union is to enhance the quality of their certificates. We don't want what happened to us to happen to them. And what do I mean? We went to public primary, we went to public secondary schools. Our children did not go to public primary schools again. If care is not taken, their own children too will not go to public universities. And we must stem the tide. We must stem this tide. Otherwise, they will ask us in the future, when all these things were happening, what did you do as those who had the opportunity to intervene? The children of the poor in this country, they cannot afford the cost of private universities.
Well, just one moment, Prof. You know, the issues of ASUU date back several years, and it is very, very troubling and disconcerting that the issues will continue to revolve the same issues over and over again over the years. I mean, so as far as some people are concerned, it dates back into the 90s for all we care. And the issues are pretty much the same. You cited a case of something that has started in 2019, you know, went as far as 2013, 2012, and all of that, and we're still talking about the same thing. What is the middle ground? Because, as you know, that popular saying, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. So if these things continue and the children continue to stay at home, young people whose minds are fertile and creative continue to stay at home redundant, one wonders what could happen. So what is it that ASUU would be willing to give up just to return to school so that these children can be, these young people can be gainfully engaged?
Yes, Ayo, thank you very much, Ayo. As you are appealing to ASUU, you need to appeal to government. We are
talking
like
with ASUU, so
victims.
please go ahead.
Each time people talk about this problem has been there for long, they don't also appreciate the solution we have brought to the system to keep the system going. But for ASUU intervention, we will no longer have public universities today. Do we still have public primary schools? Do we still have public secondary schools? That is what will happen to public universities. So each time people say, you have been doing the same thing, they need to also acknowledge that, but for TED Fund was a creation of ASUU's advocacy and struggles. So let us acknowledge what ASUU has brought to the system, that ASUU has kept the system going. Otherwise, public universities will have collapsed totally. Then you spoke about UTAS versus IPPIS. Yes, we are making some progress in that area, but where we have problem, which I must say publicly here, is government's insistence that there is a transition period within which our members will first go to IPPIS. And we told them that is not feasible. There is no transition period per se if we look at the issue very closely and conscientiously. Because as we speak now, it will take government another 3, 4, 5 months to capture more than 3/4 of our members who are not yet on IPPIS. And if government is sincere with us and we work together with that understanding, with the spirit with which we started, we can complete the process of UTAS verification, the integrity test, the last stage, as a matter of days. UTAS has been presented at 4 levels. We started with the Ministry of Education. After the Ministry of Education, we moved on to the Senate. We presented before the Senate leadership. And from there, we moved to the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, where all stakeholders, including the National Information Technology Development Agency, NIDA, and the Office of the Security Advisor, were represented. So we have done this at those 3 levels, and they all applauded the innovative invention which UTAS represents. The last Thursday, which was the last stage of presentation, we presented UTAS to vice chancellors and bursars of federal universities. They also applauded UTAS. So we have passed 4 stages of verification or test. What we are about to do now is the last stage of integrity test, which is before NIDA. And that should not take us more than a few days. So what we need is commitment. There's nothing like transition. What we are saying in essence is that government should just go ahead and pay what government has withheld, the salaries of our members. People have not been paid for 8-9 months on account of not registering on IPPIS. Government should stop this and twisting and manipulation, going back to universities to ask them to go and enroll in IPPIS so that they will now migrate to UTAS.
Professor
People
Oguyemi,
see it as a game of deception.
as we wind
So
down now, because we're trying to get a resolution. I mean, I don't think it works for anyone to have ASUU go on strike for months, almost an academic year. And, you know, looking through the timeline of ASUU strike from 2000, you realize we've had at least 10 different strike actions between 2001 and this time. But, you know, you've mentioned some areas. You said that you have done your findings. Government says there's dire economic, situation, there's COVID-19 and all that. But you say you have done your findings and you believe that the government can get that money. So as we wind down, if we could just do this in 30 seconds, what are those areas you think governments can pull out the funds from and sort ASUU?
Well, I told you about the 7-person committee that we jointly set up. Everybody knows that some of the ideas that they brought up have now been activated. We now know stamp duty is here with us. It was one of the proposals. We now know even VAT has been raised. And there are other sources. So we don't actually need to tell government where to get funds to address its own challenges, especially those they see as topmost priority. So it is not enough for people to continue to blackmail ASUU. ASUU has been the life wire for the system in the last 20 years or so. Otherwise, our public universities will have ceased to exist. Just like we cannot showcase our primary and secondary schools in Nigeria today.
Well, Professor Abiodun Oguyemi, would like to thank you so much.
Finally,
if we could just do that in 10 seconds because we're totally out of time for this segment, please.
Yes. Finally, I want to appeal to our students and their parents to appreciate what ASUU is trying to do. We want to bring our universities to the level that they will be proud of their certificates.
Okay, Professor
Public
Oguyemi.
universities in Nigeria, if not
Professor Oguyemi, I imagine the students also appealing to ASUU and the federal government to find a common ground. But we'd like to thank you so much for your time and wish you the very best in these negotiations. We've been speaking with Professor Abiodun Oguyemi, the president of ASUU, on the program this morning. Well, we'll go on a break, and when we return, we'll talk about something labor-related also. Please stay with us.
That report you saw was from August, and we're in November, and the same issues seem to be still prevalent as at this moment. The Pengassan and NUPENG are threatening to down tools over payment of salaries, and another agency of the federal government in the same oil and gas sector that hasn't been paid in about 22 months. What's all this about, you ask? Let's get to the president of Pengassan, Festus Osifo, to answer some questions from us. By the way, for this conversation as well, thank you very much for joining us. But just a quick information that we also invited the federal government, the Ministry of Labor and Employment, to this conversation. We're yet to hear anything from them. Hopefully before this conversation is over, we'll be able to hear from them. Well, Mr. Osifo, thanks for joining us this morning. So this conversation has been on for so long. Why the delay, and how come we have to get to this point every time?
Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria. Practically, for a very long time, in fact, the conversation actually started much more earlier when the issue of IPPIS came on board several years ago. So as a very proactive association, we started engaging the government, relevant government agencies on how these IPPIS could be structured to take cognizance of our pay in the oil and gas industry. So over the years, we've had these discussions up till sometime this year, when they seized the salaries of our members in some of the government agencies such as Petroleum Training Institute, PTI, agencies such as PPPROA, Petroleum Product Pricing Regulatory Agency, then NNROA as well. So then it also affected DPRO at the time. So we started conversation. We agreed with government, okay, let us set up a technical committee that will look into these issues one after the other to be sure that our specific earnings in the oil and gas industry is taken care of. But at the end of the day, the committee was set up, but government was not committed to it. They will fix a date for a meeting. Our members will get there. They will wait morning till night. Nothing was done. So clearly, we contacted the office of the IPPIS, the director of the IPPIS, to have some discussions on the subject, but they've never been committed to the cause. So again, it is negligence on the part of the government representative. That is why we are where we are today.
Very quick one on that one. You kept talking about IPPIS. Is it that Pengassan and NUPENG are against the IPPIS? What exactly is the issue?
Okay, thank you very much. The issue exactly is that for us in Pengassan, we don't specifically mind the tool that the government will use in paying our salaries. We don't mind the tool. But what we are saying is that any tool that you want to use in paying our salaries must not shortchange our members. Today, they are forcefully enrolled our members in NNROA without data capturing and without biometrics. In NNROA today, they paid them the last 2 months' salary via IPPIS. I will tell you, and it will shock you to note, that most of our members there got at least 30% reduction in their pay. And a lot of the allowances that they earned was not paid at all. So what we are saying is that the tool that you want to use in paying our members, we don't really mind, but that tool must be able to capture our specific earning within the oil and gas industry. For example, there is this tool called GiveMix. GiveMix at the time was developed by the CBN as well as the World Bank. It is a waterproof system. That GiveMix has been used to pay our members across the agencies, from Petroleum Equalization Funds to PTI to NNROA to PPPROA and to PTDF, so DPRO as well. So that GiveMix has been very efficient because it has the capability to take into cognizance all our earnings in the oil and gas industry. So for us, that particular tool was okay. So we didn't have any problem about it. But when they now introduce the IPPIS, what we asked from the beginning is that come and demonstrate to us that this IPPIS that you have brought will not shortchange our members. You know that basically in the oil and gas industry, most of our jobs are done offshore, for example. So you have somebody who leaves his house and goes to offshore, spend 1 week, 2 weeks, he comes back. There are some specific allowances the person ought to earn. When you come back, the GiveMe has a platform where you go, you enter the number of days you spent, it will be approved through the process, and your money will be paid. But today, IPPIS is not robust enough. It doesn't have such facilities. So that is why our members in the last month, they be short paid in NRA. And in PTI, for example, as well as institutions such as PPROA, the allocation for 3 months has not been released. That means our members, they've not been paid for the last 3 months. That video that you showed earlier, it was something that happened sometime in August. After much pressuring from us, they released that allocation. But from August till now, they started accumulating again. So the question is that why will you wait until there are agitations before you do the needful? So the engagement with government on the part of government should be robust and it should be holistic as well. So we are not really saying that.
Very, very quickly, let me just ask you, there has to be a reason why your members at the Nigeria Nuclear Regulatory Agency, authority, beg your pardon, haven't been paid for the 22 months that you said they haven't been paid for. There has to be some engagement, between that agency of government and its staff that, look, this is the reason your payment hasn't been made, knowing the importance or significance of the oil and gas sector to the country's, revenue generation. So what was it that government told your members there that is the reason for which they have not been paid?
Okay, just a little clarification, please. Our members in NNROA, their salaries are being paid, but there's a shortfall. The 22 months that we talked about was some specific arrears that they have been owing our members there. So it's not the monthly salary, but some specific arrears that they've been owing. Government has also acknowledged that, yes, that they are owing and that they are making efforts to pay. But this was 8 months ago. So anytime you ask them, they will tell you, okay, we are making efforts, we are putting the documentation together in order to release the money. But up to today, nothing was done. Another issue under contention is that sometime in 2018, there was an engagement with government to say, okay, all the agencies under Ministry of Petroleum that draws their funding from appropriation, let us have harmonized salary templates. So from DPRO to PPPROA to PTI to NNROA, let's have that harmonized template that will harmonize the CBA. That is a collective bargaining agreement amongst these various agencies. So there was a robust discussion and a document was produced, approved by the Salaries and Wages Commission. But up till today that we speak, since 2018, early 2019, it's not being implemented. The question is that why will government serially enter into agreement, serially sign communique? Once they sign today, the next day they renege on it. I don't think it is proper for a cordial industrial relation atmosphere.
Sounds like the conversation we just had with ASUU all over again. Now, in the case of ASUU, they're suggesting that instead of IPPIS, UTAS should be used. In the case of Pengassan, do you have an alternative for government? You mentioned a certain platform, Give Mix, I believe. Is that what you're suggesting that government use? Or you want them to tweak IPPIS such that it will accommodate the exigencies of your union?
Yes, for us, there is a Give Mix platform that was developed by CBN and approved by World Bank. So that Give Mix platform has proved to be extremely efficient. So what we are saying, I mean, that is the tool that even CBN used today. And that is the tool a lot of agencies are using. In fact, people even come outside Nigeria to understudy how the tool works, to even buy the license of that particular tool. So the question that we have asked is that if you have this Give Mix and it has been working, CBN uses that Give Mix today. So what is wrong in using the, in continuation, in continuation with that particular tool? So we don't have problem with that. Even the IPPIS, our issue is the fact that we don't have issues with IPPIS if IPPIS as well can take into cognizance our specific earnings in the oil and gas industry. So what we are saying is that any tool you want to use, you must demonstrate to us that that tool has a capacity to take all these various earnings, allowances into cognizance.
Well, just to be clear, you say that some MDAs use that Give Mix, because I understand that the IPPIS is meant to enroll all federal government MDAs that draw their personnel cost from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. But you say that there may be some agencies that use something other than IPPIS?
Yes. Before, okay, as at August, for example, the agencies such as DPRO, PPPROA, NNROA, NNROA, PTI, Petroleum Equalization Fund, they were all using Give Mix. So at the time, DPRO applied to go out of appropriation to become self-funding at the end of the year, and it was approved because they can become self-funding because they have the funds to manage themselves. But as at August, all these other agencies, they were paid through the Give Mix. And the Give Mix, as I've said earlier, is an efficient platform that has been proven and certified by international agencies. So this give mix was being used in paying our members. But today they want to migrate from the give mix platform to the IPPIS platform. So that was why they stopped the payment of salaries and the release of allocations to some of these agencies. So our position is that we are not against whatsoever platform you want to use in paying our members, but our firm position is that you must demonstrate to us that any platform you want to use should be sufficient enough and should be robust enough to take into cognizance our specific earnings. And I can tell you today that IPPIS is not robust enough to take these specific earnings into cognizance, because it's been demonstrated when they started paying NNROA, we saw a lot of shortfalls. In oil and gas industry, we have what we call the collective bargaining agreement, as is obtainable in some other industry as well. So the collective bargaining agreement specify your earnings, specify your allowances, and specify your condition of service. But when NNRA was paid, we checked with what we have in the collective bargaining agreement, it was not captured. So that means we are satisfied that today the IPPIS platform does not have the wherewithal to take care of our specific earnings.
Okay,
just as it was done to...
Yes, take it. Now, we'll get into the ramification of this possible industrial action in a moment, but I know you've had some form of interface with the government. I mean, we just saw visuals of you protesting your members with placards, and I believe that you've had maybe a sit-down or some form of correspondence with the government. If you say that for some of your members, only 30% of their pay was gotten, and even their allowances, they did not receive them, I wonder, what did the government say was responsible for that? If you did interface with them, what was responsible for that?
Yes, we've had numerous interface with government representatives. In fact, this industrial action was even supposed to start like 2 weeks ago, but there was some interventions here and there. Then, as a responsible association who put the interests of Nigerians first, we felt, okay, let's also give some time and let's have the conversation. As of today, they've not been able to come up to tell us what is responsible. But from our investigation, we realized that the IPPIS platform does not have the specifics to take into cognizance some of these earnings, some of these allowances, so that is really what is responsible. But the IPPIS will tell you today that they have saved 30% for government. So at times we do laugh because people have sweated for this, people have worked for this, pay them their correct salary. Then for the others, they'll be going to work over this month and you refuse to pay them. So they've not come up specifically with anything concrete why our members in NRA have been short paid. But the reason our members in the other agencies did not release their salary is because they felt that they have not enrolled in the IPPIS platform. But you, on the part of government, you have not demonstrated to us that IPPIS will be able to take into cognizance our specific earnings. So that has been the imbroglio.
You said just a little while ago that you have been interfacing with government at various levels. You want to intimate us who specifically have you been interfacing with, for how long, and what are the specific issues raised so far, and what are the challenges, if any, that the federal government has in not paying your members beside this IPPIS that you think may be the issue?
Yes. In fact, this engagement started in 2014 or thereabout when it started, when this IPPIS talk came up. So we have been engaging for the last 6 years on this subject. We have been discussing on this subject over this period. But the discussion gained some traction maybe sometime at the beginning of the year, where, we have interfaced with the office of the IPPIS, with the director of IPPIS. We have interfaced with the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum. We have interfaced with the Labor Ministry. We have interfaced with even the GMD and NPC. For us, all these other institutions, all they kept making is promises upon promises. It is only the GMD and NPC. He actually has been trying to champion some of these issues as well. But the more he continually champions, the more there are some level of brick walls here and there. The interface has been there for the last 6 years. Because for us in Pengassan, we don't just come out to say, oh, we want to go on strike. We don't do that. What we do, because we are an intellectual organization, so what we do, first of all, is to engage. What we do is to understand the issues and look at the underlying philosophy. And after that, we interrogate the system. Then after interrogating the system, we try to also proffer solutions. And we don't just say, oh, we are not agreeing to this, but what are the solutions that we think? So we have proffered all these, and these are within the realm of government to implement. So in the part of engagement, we have engaged, like as I said earlier, from labor to petroleum to Ministry of Finance, we have had series of engagement. And for
Well,
us,
the conversation in August during that protest that we saw, before this conversation began, you asked to speak with the minister, and you were told that the minister was not available at the time. That was in August. Has that interface happened between your organization, your union, and the minister? Are you aware that the minister got the message that you sent to him?
Yes, we are fully aware that the minister got the message, because even from the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Petroleum, we had some conversation at that level as well. And all the other, the directors in the Ministry of Petroleum, we've had several interfaces. So we are pretty sure that the minister is quite aware of these issues. Beyond the Ministry of Petroleum, even
and
Ministry of Labor.
What then are the responses or the actions that the minister has taken in response to, the issues that you raised at that protest, if you are sure that he got the message?
Yes, it's just promises. Don't worry, we are working on it. We will look at it and we will get back to you. Then, at a point, we now agreed that, okay, let us set up a technical committee to look at the subjects. The technical committee, we sent our representative to the IPPIS office. The IPPIS office will fix a date for a meeting. Our representative will get to that meeting. From morning till evening, they will refuse to show up. Again, we will contact them. They will fix another date. Then from morning till evening, they will refuse to show up. The only meeting that has been relatively successful was, I said relatively in quotes, was the meeting that was called by the Ministry of Labor some time ago. So when we had that meeting, at the end of the day, they promised that, okay, they are going to look at these issues because there was representative from finance, from Ministry of Petroleum and all that. And after that, there was no follow-up. We are the ones who consistently push. We are the ones who will write letters. We have written countless numbers of letters. We have made several phone calls. So we are the ones who kept reaching out. But on their path, it's all promises and no action.
So, as it stands right now, because I recall the statement you put out on November the 2nd, you gave 7-day ultimatum, and you said if the federal government does not respond and, accede to your requests, you will go on strike. So, as it stands right now, are your members on strike?
Yes. Today, Pengassan has declared a strike. Today, our members are sitting at home today, and we'll continually watch the situation. If we need to rev it up, we will definitely rev it up. But as of today, our members of Pengassan, we are on strike. And another issue besides this IPPIS issue, in that same letter that was released on November 22nd, is also the issue of Baker Hughes. Baker Hughes is a service company in the oil and gas industry who deliberately decided to destroy Pengassan in there by sacking literally all our executives there, a lot of our executives, and also going ahead to lock our members out for a very long time. So that is another issue that we are also pursuing in this regard. So as of today, Pengassan is on strike nationwide.
The actions. The reason I ask is because I recall that just recently you asked the federal government to produce the perpetrators of the killings of unarmed protesters. That's during the NSAS protests, else you might withdraw your services nationwide. Now you made that demand then, but you didn't carry out that strike. So was that because you thought the federal government actually responded to your demands and met them, or something else was responsible for that?
Yes, for that, clearly, there is currently the hearing that is going on in the Lagos State. So we are waiting for the outcome of that hearing. Then at the end of the day, the NEC of Pengassan will review the situation and will communicate to Nigerians.
How far-reaching is this action of your union, in the entire oil and gas spectrum in Nigeria?
Yes, Pengassan is a senior staff association in the oil and gas industry. We have members cut across everywhere, from the land locations to the offshore locations. If you remember, during the COVID era, our members, even within that time, will leave their families and ensure that the country continually earn from the oil and gas industry. So we have members everywhere. But in actions like this, because we have the interest of the nation at heart, we start at a point and we continually rev it up. So if we want it to be far-reaching, I can tell you that before the end of today, it will be far-reaching completely. But for us, we are keeping open the windows of discussion. We are keeping open all our lines to continually reach out to the people we think will be able to solve this problem if they are serious to solve it. We believe that all these issues could be addressed within the next 1 or 2 days if truly they are committed to resolving all of them.
Well, just to reiterate that we did reach out to the federal government, the Ministry of Labor, just to respond to some of these issues raised by your union and, of course, ASUU, but we're still waiting to get a response. Just on a final note, I mean, the Nigerian out there is wondering, how will that affect me? I mean, you've talked about government's earning. So how will that affect the everyday Nigerian that's talking about your strike?
Yes, for us, we have the interests of Nigerians at heart. That was why we have been discussing this subject for over 6 years. That is always why you don't see Pengassan rushing to declare strike, because we know the impact it's going to have on Nigerians. So we hereby call on the relevant government agencies to start engagement immediately, so that in the next 24 hours, this subject could be put to rest. We believe that they have the capacity to do it. We strongly believe that if they have the will, these issues could be resolved so that Nigerians will not be put into any form of hardship. So for us, we just want Nigerians to be a bit patient, because what we say in the union mantra is that injury to one is injury to all. And according to Martin Luther King, he said, our life begins to end the day we become silent about things that truly matters. So for us, this is something that truly matters, and we believe that pushing government in this direction, they will act. So we are waiting, and our lines are truly open, so that within the next 24 to 48 hours, this subject will be addressed and these issues will be put to rest.
Well, essentially, in all of this, Mr. Osifo, you have said that the federal government needs to respond, that the federal government has not been responsive enough. That's pretty much the summary of what you have said. We're hoping that we'll get a response, at least a call from the federal government, the agency responsible here, the Ministry of Labor and Employment, to ensure that the needful is done, so that this can be allayed and then the injuries that you talked about can be averted. President of Pengassan, Festus Osifo, thank you so much for your time and thoughts this morning. All right, we are back in a moment to take on another issue. Please stay with us.
Well, let's feel the pulse of the United States of America in the aftermath of that election that has been described as maybe the closest, the most edgy. I mean, those terms go on. And joining us to do just that is Dr. Patience Akpanobong. She's a professor of political science at Arizona State University in Arizona. She joins us via Zoom this morning. Well, thank you for joining us. I know it's quite late, so thank you for staying up to speak with us. Well, for some people, the election is done and dusted, but for some others, it is not quite settled. So if we could just start from there, what's the atmosphere like, especially trying to bring together people on both divides? How is it going?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Good morning. It's past midnight here, but thank you. The election technically is not yet over because some states are still counting. My state is Arizona, and we're still counting. and the result will not be official until sometime early in December. So technically speaking, we're still in the election season, but we have declared a winner based on the votes that have come in so far and the number of electoral college votes that Mr. Biden has won. So in some ways, the election is over. In other ways, we're still in the election season. But Mr. Biden is not waiting for the official certification of the election results. He has started, working as the news earlier indicated. Tomorrow, Monday, he's going to, or today, Monday, is going to set up a task force on the coronavirus because that was a major issue on which he campaigned. And you guys know a whole lot about what's going on here. Today, the United States hit another record, 100 and something thousand new cases were recorded for today, and we're almost at 10 million in terms of cases. So that is a major issue for him, and he campaigned on that, and it's also gratifying for those of us who supported his candidacy that that's what he's picking up. And so he's going to set up the task force that will start talking and start doing stuff so that when he gets inaugurated on the 28th of January, which is technically when he begins as the president of the United States. And so he will hit the ground running, as it were. So that's how everything would be under normal circumstances, but we are not in normal times in the United States these days. And so on one hand, Mr. Biden is certain of his future. On the other hand, the incumbent president is refusing to do what previous presidents have done to concede and to help with the transition to the new government. And so he's protesting the results of the election and going to court starting tomorrow and starting on Monday and all of that. So we're still in the middle of a whole lot of things, but so going forward, the next couple of weeks will tell us what the future will bring as far as elections are concerned. Yeah. Legally, though, Mr. Trump doesn't really have recourse, but Mr. Trump is Mr. Trump, so he'll do what he needs to do.
Well, the very quick one, when you said, you opened by saying that technically the elections are not over because counting is still going on in some parts. And then the latter part, you also said that it's not the normal times in the U.S. So significantly, where you stand, how significant is the number of votes that are not counted yet? How significant is the rest of the process to the results that we already have?
Okay, right now he has hit the 270 electoral votes, and that's what he needed. And so everything else is kind of icing on the cake. Nevada declared, projected him the winner over the weekend, and he got 6 electoral votes from Nevada, which he didn't really need because he already surpassed the 270. So right now, Arizona, which is my state, we have 11 electoral votes here, and the counting is still going on. Mr. Biden is leading, and but Arizona has not yet projected him as the winner. And Mr. Trump is coming to Arizona this week, or sending his surrogates this week to contest the results, which are still being counted. And so then Georgia, because it didn't meet the threshold, a certain threshold, so Georgia will have a recount. Again, it's not expected that the recount will change anything at all, because without Georgia, without Arizona, Mr. Biden still has his 270 and then some. And in North Carolina, Mr. Trump is leading, but even if he gets all the electoral votes in North Carolina, it's not going to change anything. And in Pennsylvania, Mr. Trump is contesting the result, and the argument is that there were some dead people who voted. And but even if those ballots are removed, the result will not be impacted significantly at all. And so it's to all intents and purposes and legally, Mr. Biden is going to be the new president. How we get to January 20th, 2021 is the issue right now. And so we'll see how things unfold.
But then, just as you said, Mr. Trump will do what Mr. Trump does. And one of the things he has decided to do here is go to court. And those issues that he has raised, you cited some of them. So looking at the entire United States of America's democracy, democratic process, electoral process, and all of that, are those issues that the Republican Party is raising, are those issues germane to America's democracy?
I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but lawyers who are expert on elections and government processes. They have spoken and they said there is no, they have no ground, they have no justification. So, and I know this is, I know how a lot of my fellow Nigerians feel about Mr. Trump. So I'm going to be careful about what I say about Mr. Trump on air. But the thing is that Mr. Trump will do what he needs to do because being the kind of person he is, I suppose he can just concede victory so in quote easily, especially after all the stuff he said about Mr. Biden. So I think he has a right to contest the results that he thinks were not in his favor or were rigged or fraudulent. But again, funny enough, he's not contesting the results in any of the states that he won. But the legal experts have spoken, and I've been just reading up and listening to the news in the last couple of days, and nobody says he has any justification for contesting. But everybody agrees, and I also agree that he has a right to contest if he's not happy with the results that he has seen. But I don't think that will change anything. It may just make the next 74, 73 days really, really confusing and chaotic, which is, well, that's how it is. But beyond that, I don't think it will change anything. The system here is so entrenched that even though a lot of the institutions and norms have kind of been shattered in the last 4 years, there are still some structures and some institutions that will and can withstand the confusion of the next 73 days. Again, so it's just like going on a journey. You know where you're going, but how you get there is usually unknown. So we will get to January 20th, 2021. How we get there, we don't know. But Mr. Biden is not bothered by all of that. He's still going ahead and doing what every president.
That underscores the need to have strong institutions, which has been, a focal point in recent times, especially here. Now, bringing this home, I mean, if you look at the front pages of the dailies, you see that a lot of them have stories concerning the U.S. election. In fact, one of them has this saying that some people are warning Africa not to expect much from the U.S., even though, the election has swung to the Democrats this time around. But for you, I mean, there are different opinions, but seeing what is playing out, the promises that were made, the campaign promises, which is usually a major point for voters, seeing the campaign promises on both sides, do you think this new administration might change anything for Africa, by extension, Nigeria?
Yes, I think so. Yes, he has made his campaign promises. But whatever comes up in the next 4 years will still be better than what has happened to Nigeria, to Africa in the last 4 years. One of the things that Mr. Biden has promised to do is to loosen the ban, the immigration ban, which Nigeria suddenly became part of the list of countries banned from coming out here. So he's going to do something about that. And there's this thing they call here the dreamers. The dreamers are children, people who were brought into this country when they were kids and they were brought here illegally. And so the former administration made it possible for them to stay here, work, and then start the process of becoming citizens. Mr. Trump came and discarded all of that. So one of the things that Mr. Biden has promised to do is to restore certain rights to dreamers. And so they can, again, this is for many of them, this is the only country they know, so they can continue to go to school, work, and then start the process of becoming legal citizens. And so there is that. And I think Mr. Biden, he will, of course, balance all the demands from the different sectors. But this election, his victory was made possible by a lot of people of color. About 87% of Black women voted for him. And so he owes a certain demographics. He owes people of color. He owes Black and brown people. He owes immigrants and people like us a whole lot, because we have been pivotal to his victory. And then we have the first African American woman, the first African Asian woman as the vice president. And she is the daughter of immigrants, and not just immigrants who came in 2,000 years ago, but recent immigrants. So her mom was Indian, her dad is Jamaican, and her niece is actually married to a Nigerian. So she is in the midst of this. She's not the person we'll go to tell about the stories about how to bring people out here. So we think
quite interesting
that this administration will be better
right.
for Nigerians, better for Africans than the current administration.
You know, that's quite interesting, because a recent survey, which was carried out by Pew Research, showed that 3 out of every 5 Nigerian adults actually said that they had confidence in President Trump to do what is right for the world. Now, by the way, the average across the world was about 28%. And Nigeria's is much higher. So regardless of some of these policies, it would seem Nigerians, at least the ones that participated in that survey, had confidence in him. You must have seen that rally too that was done, which the president tweeted. So what do you think is responsible for that?
To some extent, I understand why Nigerians in America will support him. And I have a couple of friends whom I don't talk to these days who support Mr. Trump and voted for Mr. Trump. To some extent, I understand that, and I may not agree with why, but I do understand. What I really, really have difficulties understanding is why Nigerians think Mr. Trump is good for Nigeria. Mr. Trump has called Nigeria certain names, and he has disrespected Nigeria and Nigerians. He has generally been very anti-immigration and anti-immigrant and anti-Black people. So from some of my friends and family members back in Nigeria, what I hear is that Mr. Trump is a Christian. And I say, no, Mr. Trump is not a Christian. Mr. Trump himself does not believe he's a Christian. And I think the biggest scam ever is the belief that Mr. Trump is a Christian. I read something recently that one of my beloved pastors in Nigeria talked about, kind of something that was recorded of him. And he said something like, people hate Mr. Trump because he's a Christian. That is not so. Those who voted against him, mostly not so much for the policy, but for his character. I don't understand why Mr. Biden, who is a Catholic, goes to Mass every Sunday, every day, or whatever, how often he does, people will vote against him based on faith and then vote for a man who doesn't go to church, who has been married 3 times and twice divorced, and is in his third marriage, 5 children from 3 different women, and he's just a whole lot of things that I don't even have to say here because people know that. I don't know how people look past that because it's about character, it's about
Akwanobong,
principle, it's
it's
about
interesting
decency.
also because there was a Q&A that was carried out with President Trump, and he was asked if he is a Christian, and this is what he says. He says, I now consider myself to be a non-denominational Christian. So I understand that this is an ongoing conversation, but for Nigerians in the US, I mean, talk about trade relations between Nigeria and the US. There's about 1% population of Nigerians in the US. So that's substantial enough compared to other countries. How do we move forward? I mean, you mentioned that there are some people you don't talk to because of their affiliation or political inclination, but there's obviously a need to move
Disagreement
forward.
on principle, yes.
On principle, right. So, but there's clearly a need to move forward, and people have been talking about healing that divide. The report we played earlier mentioned that. So, in a few seconds, how do you think we can move forward with all this polarization and all that?
Well, it's going to take time because, again, it's one thing as a political scientist, I allow people the right to believe in what they want to believe in, vote for whomever. But this election was not just about the policies or the fact that Mr. Trump reduced how much oil was being imported from Nigeria, which also had other consequences for the Nigerian economy. It wasn't about so much about the policies, it was about character. It was about me telling my young children about how to behave in public. And then we turn on the TV and then we see the person who is the president. So it's going to take a while, but we'll get there as a country, as people, and we will follow the leadership of Mr. Biden, who said it's time to heal. We have to come together. But I think it's going to take time because, again, it's about character. It's for me, it's like if you think this is a good man, then I have to question your own values. But we'll get there. I mean, a lot of us don't have anywhere else to go. I can always come back to Nigeria, but not everybody else has another place to go to. But so we're all here, and we will make it happen. The healing will happen. We just need to get through the next 73 days.
Whew. Well, we wish you the very best in that. But we'd like to thank you again for staying up to speak with us. We've been talking to Dr. Patience Akwanobong, a professor of political science at Arizona State University in Arizona. Thank you so much for your thoughts.
Thank you, sir, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
And you too.
Well, interestingly, your comments are next, and we will close with them. This one, the first one, is from Odium Crown, and clearly talking about the first topic we handled today, which was about the ASUU FG imbroglio. Says, FG should just try a little bit more. They are both trying.
Well, you know, the FG is offering 20 billion. ASUU is asking for 110 billion. I don't think that's a little bit more. You have to bridge that 90 billion. So, well,
90 billion try.
Oh, absolutely. So maybe try a 90 billion more.
The problem for me is not whether or not they do these little things. The problem is the longevity, the sustainability of whatever it is that we do. You know, we should try more to establish systems that will make sure that the cycle never stops. We talked about 2 issues today. Anyway, let's go on.
Well, take a look at this one from UNISA saying state universities have resumed. Private universities have started a new session, and ASUU said they are on strike in the interest of students and parents. He's asking, which interest?
Good question there. Hambolu Olayemi says, I agree with the ASUU president. If the government is serious and sincere, there are several ways to raise the funds ASUU is asking for. For instance, they can put the 29 billion naira budgeted for National Assembly renovations into universities' infrastructural development, but to them, it's more important at the National Assembly.
Okay, we'll just let the National Assembly respond to that. But you see, Olaiwola Droplet says, it's pathetic how our public universities always embark on strike. The FG and ASUU should find a lasting solution to ensure an end to ASUU's subsequent strike. Imagine, he's already predicting future strikes.
I referenced the same thing. Our timeline today talked about, this Fourth Republic, but 2-3 governments before that, ASUU had been going on strike incessantly. So, if, as we will say on this program, you know what someone will do by what he has done before. Lanre Salako says, I believe the IPPIS team is really the problem for Pengassan and ASUU. If the IPPIS team is competent, configuring the software to accommodate the options for various professionals should not be a problem. I believe they should invite experts to upgrade the application.
Oh, Area Warren has an interesting take on this whole how to get money to fund universities and solve this imbroglio. He says, there's enough fund in the National Assembly to fund education. What is the priority of the National Assembly in national development? Let the National Assembly members work part-time, or better still, slash their total package by 80%, and we have money to fund education.
There are two laws we have to adjust for that. Okay. First of all, we have to adjust the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and then we have to adjust the RMAFC Act to ensure that they can slash their pay by, what's it called?
Oh, so it's doable, is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what the law says. If it's going to be considered at all, those two laws have to be amended. But before you can adjust the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 36 state assemblies are involved.
And you have National Assembly.
And you have to go through the National Assembly to talk to the state houses of assembly in 36 states.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, that's the show today. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day, and please remain safe. I am Ayo Makinde.
And I'm Kaido Kikilu. Thank you for joining us.